Last time we looked at Sega's more unique take on a Sonic racing game, Sonic Riders. It was incredibly jank at times, but I still think it's one of the best Sonic racing games. Not only was it fun, but it's also unique, and the hoverboard fits perfectly with Sonic's style compared to just throwing in a car. A couple years later, Sega released a sequel, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. Whenever I think back to this one, I always remember it being the weaker version of the Riders formula. But was I right about that, or has my opinion changed? The story follows the same flow as the first. It is broken up into Hero and Babylon stories, with you playing the heroes first. This time around, however, the story is not about a Grand Prix. Mysterious meteorites containing gravity powers have fallen from the sky, and the robots of the world have gone a bit mad. The heroes try and find out what they are, who's responsible, and eventually bump into the rogues once again, while the rogues know exactly what they are and are just trying to discover the treasure at the end of the trail. The story itself does feel very adventure at times, with lore being explored a lot more than you'd expect in a racing game. The Babylon story once again finishes with Sonic fighting a boss, which in gameplay is kinda funky. Everyone can hit the boss, but only Sonic's hits count. So you have to race your opponents to hit the boss before they mess things up and waste your limited time. I did enjoy the story a lot more this time around, as again it feels very adventure at times.
Ha! Took long enough. Where's Eggman?
The gameplay to Zero Gravity is similar to the first Riders, but also very different. The first major difference being that the game does not have an air meter, no losing air by boosting or drifting about too much, and eventually being forced to run about. Now instead we have a gravity meter, which utilises the new moveset, and running out of the meter will just not allow you to perform any of the techniques. In Zero Gravity we no longer have the boost or drift. Instead we have a gravity boost and gravity drift. They sound similar but act much differently. The drift allows you to move very slowly and aim yourself in a direction to blast off in said direction with a burst of speed. The gravity boost allows you to fly up in the air and fly forwards with a burst of speed for as long as you have resources in the meter. While doing this, you can also raise up a bunch of the environmental objects that you can use to bounce off for extra speed. Both of these mechanics are fun, stylish, and utilised quite well in gameplay. While using either of the moves, you pick up objects around the environment and throw them around for a lot of carnage. The music is also affected by the boost, which also adds some extra flair. But it's not all good. The gravity drift move in particular is fun, but is also quite a drag on gameplay. Because it's so slow to pull off, and slows down the gameplay to a crawl when you use it, it can interrupt gameplay quite a lot. Because we no longer have the drift from the earlier game, every sharp turn does have to be solved by a gravity drift. The original drift was fast and had some utilisation outside of just turning, so losing it is felt in gameplay. It does also have the knock-on effect of having the player actually take corners with a bit more precision. As in the earlier game, I used the drift to correct overshot turns, whereas in this one, it's hit a wall or use the very slow gravity drift to correct it. Some extra differences in Zero Gravity has to the earlier game is the gear change system. Here we have the same system of characters and gear types, speed for grinding rails, flight for using ramps and rings to fly with, and power to punch things. In Zero Gravity, instead of having these off the start line, you have to unlock them with a gear change by collecting a set amount of rings, so it makes you really go out of your way to collect rings if you want to utilise the shortcuts. The gear change does also change how the extreme gear looks. The speed gear will stay the same, flight gear will change into this contraption, and it's kind of awkward looking because now I have to stare at the character's backside. Power gear changes into a motorbike. While this is a neat change, I do honestly just prefer how the hoverboard looks, rather than the booty board or the motorbike. Defeats the whole reason why I like the Riders games as much as I do. The trick system has also changed. Now instead of holding the button down and performing manual tricks, you just hit the jump button on a particular time on the ramp and you'll do a trick. The rank and type of trick is based on how long you leave it before you hit the button. You can still mess this up and slow yourself down by doing it way too early, but for the most part it is a much simpler system compared to Riders. Controlling the hoverboards themselves does feel a lot better than in Riders. It's not as sensitive, and just overall I feel like I have more control over the boards, thankfully, as you do need to be a bit more precise here. With the loss of the boost, we have also lost the ability to attack opponents, and turbulence trails. The trails are still there sometimes, just not as much as they were in Riders, which while playing through the story and a few Grand Prix wasn't really necessary, as this game feels significantly easier than the first game. In Riders it was a constant battle to try and stay ahead. The opponents were ruthless, and one mistake normally spelt the end of your first place dreams. In Zero Gravity, I could mess up as much as I wanted, and I normally would still be miles ahead of the competition. I only had a couple occasions where I really messed up and was forced to restart, but other than those, I never really struggled to stay ahead. When I think back to this game, I always remembered it being slow, but I do think I was mistaken, as some parts of this game really do have a great sense of speed. Yeah, we have no boost, but I do think they did a great job of making some areas, making you feel like you're going the speed the game is telling you you are going. Everything gameplay wise in Zero Gravity just feels like a more polished version of the first game, which is, well, what you would hope for in a sequel. Grind rails don't feel as janky, flying feels a bit more fluid, it's just overall a much more polished experience, with its own jank with the gravity mechanic though. The tracks in Zero Gravity work similarly to the first game. We have 16 tracks for the game. Each one again is a counterpart to the other. Heroes get a nice sunny version of a city, and the rogues get a rainy variant. Heroes get a nice pleasant jungle, and the rogues get a snowy variant, and so on. I do really like the tracks this time around. They have a ton more going on, and the various weather effects look great. My favourite being Tempest Waterway, as it's just very stormy, the water is super fast flowing, and it looks really good and very chaotic. The tracks in the story to the game are mixed up this time around, which is a nice surprise. In the first game, heroes and rogues went through the same themes in the same order, but here, as they are in different places in their stories, the tracks match that. So the heroes start in the city, but the rogues start in a temple. The only strange thing about the tracks is just the general gameplay in terms of the story. For the most part, you're trying to go somewhere or run away from something, but the gameplay is still a traditional 3-lap race. For example, in the first race in the rogues, the objective is escape the ruin, and you just do a 3-lap race around said ruin. It just feels very disconnected. It's not a major issue or anything like that, it's just quite noticeable where the objective is to escape the ruins and characters go, let's give it 3 laps around before we leave. The 2 bonus tracks are quite fun, with them having Sega themes for the 80s and 90s versions. The game, like the first one, has a ton of unlockables. Once you complete the main story mode, you unlock Eggman, Cream, Shadow, Rouge, Silver and Blaze, with Sega stars like Billy Hatcher, Knights, Amigo and Eggman robots being unlocked through completing all the missions. Even Supersonic is unlockable. One thing I do like about the character designs is that they all have different ways of carrying the gravity ring. Not all of them wear it on their wrist, some characters have it on their waist, fingers and even ankles. It doesn't change anything in gameplay, it just changes how the character uses it and the animation for it, which again is nothing major, it just gives some nice variety on how each character uses the ring. The game has various modes for you to play: story, normal race, Grand Prix, and a few multiplayer modes. This time mission mode is snuck into the game's campaign area, and I completely missed it until I looked up how to unlock extra characters. The game also includes a store again, so you can buy extra gears with the rings you've collected. So again, like the first game, there is a ton to unlock and play for, if you so choose. Zero Gravity was actually a nice surprise. As I said, I've always remembered this one being the lesser version of Riders. While it has some drawbacks, I do think it is a very good Sonic racing game. It keeps the feeling of speed with the style and aesthetic of the Extreme Gear boards. The story is different, with it not just being about Grand Prix events. As I said, it feels very adventure-y at times, and the tracks themselves are fun and aesthetically interesting. I will probably not be covering the next game in the series, Free Riders, as for 1, I don't have an Xbox or the required Kinect. 2, we've seen how bad it is and there are plenty of other people who have suffered to show us why. This is the last time we see the Babylon Rogues for years, until we meet again in Cross Worlds. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.
Better behave yourselves.